Um, I am Katie Luvis, and I provide staff support for the Carrboro Business Alliance. Today's discussion is a joint call hosted by the Carrboro Business Alliance and the Town of Carrboro. The Carrboro Business Alliance is about 100 enterprises in Carrboro who are committed to a thriving community. And it's our pleasure to facilitate this conversation today. On this call, which is open to any and all enterprises in Carrboro, and this call will be recorded and shared with anyone who missed it. So after the call, you will get a link to the recording. But on this call, the flow for today, we've got an hour designated, and we may not need the full hour, but we've got it if we need it. And we're going to start with John Hartman Brown giving a nice overview of this emergency grant program, and then we'll turn to you all for any questions or comments. During the call, my colleagues Vanessa Watson and McKinsey are here to help with any technology issues that you might have. So if you run into any hiccups, feel free to email Vanessa or drop a note in the chat. We also have the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Erin Nelson, who is going to help facilitate the comment period as well. So any questions or comments, drop them in the chat throughout. So we'll make sure you get all your questions answered. You also probably noticed that your lines are muted. That's just going to be to help facilitate the flow so there's no confusion, but you'll have time to ask questions later on. Vanessa will continue to let people in, and if you need to scoot, again, this will be recorded and we'll send you the link afterwards. But with that, let's get to it. So John Hartman Brown is the Economic Development Director for the Town of Carrboro. He's been in his role for about a year. And I'll tell you, this emergency grant program, we owe him and the Carrboro Town Council and the outgoing manager, David Andrews, a big thank you. This is going to be a huge relief for our local enterprises. And we're really, really grateful to John for doing all of the thoughtful work to get this grant program approved so rapidly and designed. Today, we're going to learn about the framework for the grant program, how to apply, who's eligible, all those good questions. So John, take it away.
Thanks, Katie. Get in here and get my screen share going. All right, can I get a thumbs up if everybody sees the screen? Looks okay? All right, awesome, thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Katie mentioned, my name is John Hartman Brown. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Town of Carrboro. I really want to walk through today the grant program that we're setting up for COVID-19 mitigation for businesses. The Town Council has allocated up to $300,000 total for this grant program for us to distribute out to local businesses. So a big thank you to our Town Council for doing that. That is a huge, huge commitment on their part. And so we want to thank them especially for that. One note I want to make is before we get started is that this policy is still being revised. We're about probably 95 to 98% there. So I don't expect a lot of changes, but I do want to put a kind of a short disclaimer in here just to say that, things may change and we will have the final policy available on our website that you can review. And so if you have a question about whether something is allowed or a project concept idea that you have, feel free to check the policy or to run it by department staff, and we'll be more than happy to give you some guidance and direction on how the final policy fell out. So let's talk a little bit about funding. As I mentioned, Town Council allocated up to $300,000 to go out in grant funds. These the funds that council has allocated does not come from the general fund, but comes from the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA Act. I'm sure many of you have heard about this fund. And so these funds are funds that are coming to the town through state government as a part of the American Rescue Plan Act. One thing to keep in mind is that these are one-time funds. These funds are not going to be replenished, or at least we don't think that they will be. We're pretty sure this will be a one-time thing. So it's important to keep in mind that this is not an ongoing grant program. This is just a one-time grant program. There may be another round in the future, depending on how many funds are expended during this round. But please keep that in mind as you're thinking about applying for the grant, is that this is not, not an ongoing program. So be looking at those things that can help you recover and that are more focused on one-time expenditures. And as we were talking about, the American Rescue Plan Act is very much focused on economic recovery. And so you'll see that reference back to a lot during this presentation. Because of that, the town is accountable to the American Rescue Plan Act regulations, as well as the state regulations. Some communities were getting funds directly from the federal government. Some communities are getting funds through the state. And so we are subjective to those ARPA regulations, as well as any additional regulations that the state may put on the funding. So let's, getting into the grant, let's take a look at what some of the minimum requirements are. So we try to be flexible, but really focus on getting back to that economic recovery, businesses that have been impacted by COVID. So some of the caveats we have are: to apply for the grant, the business needs to be in existence prior to July 1st of 2020. You also need to have a physical location, or the business, more importantly here, the business location needs to be within the Carrboro town limits. So if your incorporation is in Carrboro, that's what we're really going to be looking at. And this would include home offices. So if you have a home-based business, as long as it is within the town of Carrboro limits, it will qualify. We do have an agreement that is required as a part of this as well, saying that you'll abide by the ARPA funds and the minimum requirements. So that is something that you'll see as well. And the big caveat here, getting back to ARPA requirements, is that you must be able to demonstrate how these grant funds will mitigate the negative economic impacts from COVID-19 on your business. And so this could include a variety of things, which we'll get into a little later. But this is the big caveat. This is the thing that will most likely get somebody kicked out, their application booted out of the system, of the review process. If there's a concern or a question about how the improvement will mitigate the negative economic impacts from COVID. And one other side note here is to define business. Right now, as the policy states, the business is defined as any establishment engaged in the selling of goods or services for the purpose of generating a profit. So as the policy stands right now, this does not include nonprofit establishments. I'll allude to this a little later, but there is a public comment period happening right now. So if this is something that you feel strongly about or need to be modified, or think that this should be considered, please do make a public comment on that. I've gotten a lot of requests and a lot of emails and calls about this. So if this is something that you are interested in modifying, kind of how we're defining business for the purposes of this grant and who can apply, please feel free to make a comment. I should note that my colleagues in the Housing and Community Services Department are also going to be working on some ARPA grant funding as well. And so there will probably be another, there will be another opportunity for nonprofits to apply, although their program may look slightly different than what we've put together here. So just kind of keep that in mind. Application prioritization. So once we get all the applications in, how are we going to look at and prioritize who's going to get funding over other folks? So we're really looking at these listings right here. These are really the categories that we're going to focus on, or at least we're proposing that we'll focus on. The tourism sector businesses, and tourism sector businesses are really defined in the policy as a restaurant, a bar, a brewery, a hotel or motel, or an entertainment venue. And so if you are one of those types of businesses, you would qualify as a tourism sector business. If you have year-over-year revenue losses of 30% or greater for any 6-month period in the last, really the last kind of the heavy part of COVID, this is another area that you can qualify as a prioritization. You'll get priority. If you're a BIPOC business, and we've taken a broad approach to defining BIPOC business. So it's not only just a business that is owned by a person of color, or at least holds at least 50% ownership, but we're also allowing for businesses that may have more of a board or structure, in which case a person of color controls the management and daily operations of the business. So if the CEO or COO is a person of color, and at least half of their direct reports are persons of color. So the CEO, COO is a person of color, and then at least half of their senior staff are persons of color. We will qualify that as a BIPOC business. Or of course, if the business is owned, has a person of color has at least 50% ownership stake in the business, of course, it will be considered a BIPOC business. A certified living wage employer, another area that will be focused on getting higher priority. And we're, again, looking at a broader approach. So not just Orange County living wage employers, but also anybody that is certified, any business that is certified with the Durham Living Wage Project. So if you're certified by one of those organizations, you would get the additional prioritization there. And locally owned business is another area. And we're defining this as persons who own have at least a 75% ownership stake in the business and live in Orange County or an adjacent county. So Alamance County, Caswell, Chatham, Durham, Person counties, all those counties, as well as Orange County, would be qualified to say that as long as the owner's primary residence is in one of those counties, we will consider that a locally owned business. And then, of course, other things, business providing a dollar matching with non-federal funds. So if a business is willing to say, hey, I've got a $30,000 project I need to get done, and I want to use 20,000 of it from this grant program. Of course, a third of those funds are coming from the private business. So you'll get additional prioritization. We really want to make sure that these funds are being used not only to help mitigate business needs and challenges from COVID-19, but also making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck and that businesses are being able to use this to get the most bang for their buck. Of course, longtime Carrboro businesses located in Carrboro for 5+ years. Small businesses, so businesses with 2 or fewer locations, and businesses within 500 feet of the proposed 203 project. This is a little bit unique, and I've had some folks question me about this. What we're really looking at here is that coming out of COVID, and especially now as things are changing with COVID, Orange County's just issued the indoor mask mandate with the Delta variant. The 203 project is still on track to move forward. And so one of the things we're looking at is businesses coming right out of COVID and having challenges and then going right into kind of a construction mode. So we're really looking at businesses that will be mostly impacted by the 203 project as having additional prioritization as well. The next section in the policy is the COVID-19 impact narrative. This narrative is going to be really one of the most important parts of the application. And the extent to which the grant funds in the particular situation will mitigate the negative economic impact on the business or adapt the business to a post-COVID environment is really what we're going to be looking for. So if you are considering applying for this grant, be thinking about this statement right there. That statement is going to be the big key component for really evaluating, making sure that you're meeting the ARPA funding requirement components. We're allowing about a half a page, so about 250 words for this section. So the expectation is that we don't want to overburden and make this a very narrative heavy application. And so we're limiting it to 250 words maximum. So make sure that you're thorough, but keep it concise. And just make sure that you're really emphasizing how this grant program will mitigate the negative economic impacts on your business from COVID, or of course, adapt your business to a post-COVID environment. Just a note that this area is most likely to disqualify an applicant. So make sure that when you're filling this section out, when you're doing the narrative, be sure to thoughtfully think through how what your request is makes mitigates the impact from COVID. All right, now we're getting to the fun stuff, the part that everybody's been waiting for. What can you use these funds for? So I'll caveat by saying that we're taking a very broad approach to this. We recognize, and we are not trying to corral businesses into a corner here when it comes to these types of things to this program. So we want to make sure that you are being able to use these funds in a way that will most help you. So we're providing broad categories, and what you're going to see here are some examples. And these are not exclusive. So please don't, be overly concerned if you're thinking, oh, this is marketing and advertising, but it's not listed here. That's okay. And if you have a question, please feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to discuss it with you. So some of our eligible grant uses: marketing and advertising. And this could be anything from social media, print, radio, any type of advertising that you feel is necessary for your business. Providing a rewards or loyalty program, a format of marketing here. Maybe purchasing some promotional materials as a way to help get your business to recover and attract, bring back old customers and introduce new customers to your business in a post-COVID-19 world. Back rent and utilities. We know that there's a lot of businesses that are behind on rents, utilities. So this can be used for any format of utilities: water, gas, electric, internet, your building rents. And we've really kind of expanded this to, in our examples at least, to include things like overdue property taxes. So if you own your building outright and you're behind on property taxes, you can utilize these funds for that as well. But COVID-19 loan repayment, another category. Basically any type of loan, whether it's a credit card debt, business credit card debt, let me clarify that. Private loans that you've taken out, loans issued by the county, state, or the town that you've taken out to help get you through COVID-19 can be eligible uses under this grant program. One caveat is that federal loan repayment under this grant program is not permitted. So if you have an EIDL loan or PPP loan, these funds cannot be used for that. And that comes out of a guidance from the ARPA guidance. Basically just says that the ARPA funds cannot be used for federal federal loan repayment, or cannot be conjunctioned with other federal funds. Training new under or unskilled employees. This is kind of an open, broad category. Again, some examples that we've included here are things for like a salary for an employee trainer to train new under or unskilled employees. So if you're a restaurant and you're short staffed and you really need to bring some folks in, maybe you can't find the employees that you're looking for as far as that have the skill sets that you need, but they're willing to be trained. This is an opportunity for you to basically say, hey, I'm going to use these funds and I'm going to pay one of my current employees with this grant program to train one or two unskilled or under skilled employees that you bring on. So really, this is an opportunity. We know that there's a workforce imbalance as far as training is concerned, and as far as skill sets. So this is really an opportunity for you to use your employees to help kind of train new employees that you bring on. Additionally, it could also be used for training seminars or any kind of courses. If there's a offering at Durham Tech that you want to have one of your employees go through, or a couple employees go through, you can use these funds for that as well. Just to note that we have limited this. So right now it is limited to $1,500 or 10% of your grant application, whichever is greater. So if your applications for the full 20,000, you can have up to $2,000 for training under or unskilled employees. Some other uses, capital expenditures to adapt to a post-COVID environment. Again, this would include any kind of broad capital expenditures. It could include equipment, building improvements that are necessary. If you need to put up more dividers in your building, plexiglass dividers to keep people spaced out. If you need to get maybe more tables or something like that so that you can have smaller groups in order to keep spacing, keep social distancing in your business, that would be another example of an eligible expense. Anything you need to, outdoor dining enhancements to make sure that folks can eat outside, that would be another qualified expense here. So, and of course, as I mentioned, these are broad uses. So it allows flexibility with our businesses. So if there's something that is not here that you think would fit into one of these broad categories as the examples we provided, just ask. Feel free to reach out and say, hey, I've got this idea. I think it would fit under a capital expenditure. What do you think? And the big question I'm going to ask is, how is it going to help your business adapt to a post-COVID environment, or how is it mitigating the negative impacts, negative economic impacts of COVID-19 on your business? Just another note, the maximum amount of the grant is $20,000 per business. So it's a pretty decent size. You don't have to use all of that. If you are applying and maybe you have $10,000 for an expense that you want, you can apply for $10,000, but a maximum of $20,000 will be awarded per business. And again, emphasizing this fact again, if you cannot make a direct connection to a negative economic impact from COVID-19, then do not include that item. So if you're filling out a grant application for $20,000 worth of eligible uses activities, and there's maybe one of them that's not quite there. There's not a strong connection, direct connection to the negative impact, economic impact from COVID-19. Do not include that item. I would be more than happy to talk with you about whether that would qualify or not. But this is an area where if we can't find a direct connection, we're going to either, the whole application could be jeopardized because there's not a strong connection. So make sure if there's something that doesn't provide a direct connection, and you can make your case in your narrative, but please reconsider that item, because we don't want to get into a situation where a few $1,000s might cost you the rest of your projects. All right, so reporting. We are anticipating that funds will be expended within 1 year from the award date. And there's really 1 or 2 reports that will be required as part of your follow-up. There will be a 6-month report required if you are not able to expend the funds within 6 months. So if you go beyond 6 months, if you use the full year to expend your funds, we do require a 6-month report. And you can see there, it's not a extensive report. It's basically just kind of an update that you're providing with a short narrative explaining the status or delay and what funds you have already expended. The final report, however, is due within 1 year when all those funds are expended, or when they're expended. If they're expended in 10 months, you can submit your final report then. And we are looking for copies of receipts or checks, photos of the items purchased or improvements made, a narrative, again, going back to drawing a direct connection, how these activities, how this grant program has helped you mitigate the negative impacts of COVID-19 on your business. And that's key. The final report is going to be key for us showing, from the town's perspective, showing when we are audited that we have used these funds wisely and our businesses have used them to really meet the need and the intent of ARPA. All right, we're going to jump from policy to application now. Not too much on here. Application's fairly short. It's only about 4 pages, most of which is text. So it's just a lot of checking the boxes, the short narrative component, and of course a budget worksheet, which we'll go through here in a minute. So we do require that the business owner, CEO, COO, signer, be a signer on the application. So just, if you're working, make sure that you're aware that you'll need their authority, permission to get this signed off on. There is a 2-year business closure. I said agreement here, but it's really more of a intention. What we don't want is, we are not looking for a business to take these funds, utilize them, get out of debt, and then the business owner say, well, that was good. Okay, now I'm out of debt. I'm going to retire and close the business. So we're really putting this kind of 2-year business closure component in the final statement that you'll need to sign off when you sign off on the application. Basically just saying that you have no intention of closing this business within the next 2 years. If something happens, and we understand that, this is not a guaranteed will not close. If you do close, you're going to have to pay the grant back. It is strictly a intention, and we're making it very clear that this is not made for you as a as a business owner to get out of debt and then ride off into the sunset. We want that business to remain active. We want the business community to remain vibrant. And that is really the intention of this, is to help the businesses get back to a place of vibrancy. And so we want to make sure that the business is at least going to be around for a little while longer before, we see a closure or retirement. And of course, any changes to the activities, once the award is made, you cannot make any changes to the activities you've requested in your grant application without prior authorization. All right, so we're almost finished up here, but I wanted to go through the budget form real quick just to explain a little bit here. So there's these different sections to complete on the budget form. The first, of course, is the grant category, and that goes back to those broad areas that we were referring to, either back rent and utilities. It could be the COVID-19 loan repayments. It could be capital improvements. Any of those areas that were those broad areas, that's what we're looking for here. And then we're looking for your specific activity. What is it that you want to use these funds for? So as in this example, we're using it for overdue back rent. And then a description. It doesn't need to be lengthy, just no more than a sentence, just kind of talking about, here's what, just providing a little bit more description of what you're talking about. So here's an example, back rent for the building at 100 North Main Street for April, May, June 2021. And then the total cost of that, and then how much you're wanting to use of the grant. Now, these two columns are very important because we want to make sure that we are capturing any dollars that you're paying for. So if you are doing a project, let's say your total grant request is around $10,000 and you need to make some improvements to your building, but you don't want to necessarily use all of the grant funds for that. If you have to make an improvement and the improvement is going to be $15,000, you might do an activity, I'm going to, purchase, construct and make improvements in my building for social distancing. And it's going to cost me $15,000 to do that project. But I only want to use $10,000 of it from the grant request. This is where we're going to capture, and that's why we're asking for the total cost of each activity that you want to do, because this is where we will capture how many dollars are actually you're putting in as well. So if you are a business and you're putting in some money, make sure you use this total cost to fully capture the actual cost of the improvement that needs to be made or the activity that you're going to do. If you're back rent for 6 months and you only want to use the grant to pay for 4 months, make sure that's captured. Back rent for, I'm back rent for 6 months, put the total back rent here, and then the grant, how much of the grant funds you want to use towards that activity in a grant request component column. This is going to be key for showing us that you are also putting in dollars. And so this is going to really give you additional points back when we go back to the prioritization component, where you're matching, you're putting some dollars into this as well. So it's not just the grant paying for everything. The grant's paying for a large portion of it, but the business is also putting some funding in, and that'll get you some additional prioritization. All right, last slide here. I think it's the last slide. Public comment. The public comment period on the policy, as I mentioned before, is currently open. It will close next Tuesday, August 17th at 5 o'clock. So we're leaving it open for a short window of time. And you can go on there, and there is a public comment form that you can fill out. There is the policy that is there as well, so you can review that. You can go to our website, townofcarrboro.org. Just go to the Your Government menu at the top, go down to Economic Development and click on that. And then once you're there, go to the COVID mitigation grant link. And you can see that here's our economic development page. And right down here at the bottom is the COVID-19 mitigation grant. Just click on that and it'll take you to the page where it'll have, we'll post a video of this recorded, link to this recording, as well as the policy and public comment form. And that's it. So thank you all. There's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. It's my cell phone number, so feel free to call or text if you have any questions, and feel free to shoot me any emails. And Katie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent job, John. Thank you so much. We're going to transition to Q&A. Erin is going to help facilitate that, and I have seen some questions come in the chat. So we should have a good discussion. Let me just give a quick recap for everyone, because there were a few people who joined while John was presenting. So there were 5 things that I heard that were the key messages about this grant program. First, and the most important, is that you should only apply if you've been negatively impacted by COVID, and your application must be clear that these funds would be spent to address those negative COVID impacts. That's the first thing. That of everyone who applies, the second thing is that there are some organizations who will have an advantage, you could call it, that they would be seen as priorities. And those are things like if you're in the tourism industry, if you're a BIPOC owned enterprise, if you're locally owned, if you're able to secure matching funds, things like that. The third thing I heard is that there are some broad eligible uses. So the town has set up some guardrails in general, but there's some wide discretion as far as what would be an eligible use for your negative COVID impact: marketing and advertising, back rent, COVID loan repayment, training for workers, capital expenditures. So a lot of different potential uses. And if you have anything in question, you can just contact John about that. Fourth thing is that the grant is available up to $20,000, but you don't have to ask for the full freight. You can ask for less, and it has to be spent within a year. And there's very minimal reporting requirements. This is not a burdensome process, which I think the town has demonstrated a good faith effort to keep this as simple and clean, but fair as possible. And then the fifth thing is that the policy is still being determined. So today, through this conversation, if there's a concern on the grant design that we want to raise, you have the opportunity to issue formal comment to the town to see if you can get that changed. So those are the 5 key things I heard. John, do you want to punctuate anything else before we turn to Q&A?
Public comment. Go on, read through the policy. The copy of the application is there. It's an appendix to the policy, so you can see what that is. And then the second thing is really start thinking about how you can draw your projects back to your activities, back to negative COVID-19 impacts.
Okay, so you've got at least a week before the grant application is going to open, right? So you've got a little time to think about it. Erin, what are you seeing as far as questions?
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Katie and John, for organizing this today, and John for such a thorough presentation and professional organization of this. I've talked to chambers and business associations across the country, and sometimes these programs feel like they get slapped together, and yours is very thoughtfully created. There were questions about where the information will be found. I think we have that now. We'll both share a link to this as well as the PowerPoint so that folks can take another look through that. The other question is about nonprofits and their eligibility. John, you had said that the requirement was that it is for enterprises that transact goods or services, got to sell a product or service. Then you said, comma, for the purpose of making a profit. Many local nonprofits transact goods and services, the Arts Center, Community Works, but they do it for a different purpose. And so I can see why you might want to exclude a garden club, but maybe earned income nonprofits. So questions about that and how folks should comment, or maybe what your thinking is on nonprofits there?
Yeah, all I can say is that it's complicated right now. There's a little bit of, so these conversations have been much broader, of course, than just my department. We've been interacting with Department of Housing and Community Services. We've been interacting with our legal team to figure out, and our finance team to figure out what does ARPA, ARPA obviously allows for nonprofits. And so how are we trying to walk that tightrope? That has been a key part of our discussion, Erin. Do we want to allow things like, or the more important question is, how do we differentiate between nonprofits that for lack of a better term, have a business model versus nonprofits that have a nonprofit model. And so that's really kind of been a question that we are debating. So I would be open to any, like I said, any comments. Primarily, as you mentioned, we are looking at those who do sell product service. If you're a garden club, please, you're more than welcome to comment, but please keep it on functional component of the policy.
Excellent. Thank you. That is helpful. And I expect that the Carrboro Business Alliance or others may comment. There may be a way to create that language to solve to achieve that distinction on earned income based nonprofits. I'm scanning back through. Let me just open, can we just open the microphones and allow people to raise their hands and see if there are questions you want to ask John directly?
Aaron, I did see one question in the chat, if I may, and it had to do with what happens, John, if someone applies for the funds for specified approved activities, receives the funds, but then spends them on other things?
You will be required to pay that back.
May I ask it differently?
Sure.
What if they requested the funds, I don't know, to install a new awning out front, but they never get approval for it, or it doesn't pass the zoning rules or whatever, and may they come to you to modify and spend it on some other approved thing, but not what they requested?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, the caveat here is that if you can't go spend these funds in the final report, if you have something that you spent the funds on and it wasn't in your application and staff did not pre-approve your expense of that, that's where we're going to find a problem. So, if there's something that happens, we're flexible. We'll work with you on getting, finding a way that you can spend those funds. But again, don't do anything that's not already pre-approved in the application or pre-approved by staff.
May I ask, do you expect that folks keep the funds segregated, as many did with their PPP or their EIDL loans? I guess I'm asking it, money is fungible, right? It arrives, they made payroll with it, and then a month later, they bought the thing that they said that they were going to buy. That's fine, right? You just need proof that they spent it. But you don't, do you need them to segregate the money and only spend that on?
No, we're not requiring that. But we are, we will request receipts, cancel checks, so we do need proof that you have spent the funds and how much of the funds you've spent. In other words, if you put the awning on, don't take a picture of the awning and send that in and say, oh, there's my final report. I did the awning. We need a copy of the receipt to show how much has been spent. And if there's a discrepancy between you requested $20,000, but you only spent 15, where's the other 5? I would probably encourage businesses to keep it separate just for the challenge of trying to track that. And if there's any, if for some reason you can't spend all your funds or things come in cheaper than what you had originally anticipated, that those funds are sitting there usable. But we're not requiring that. So that would be up to the business.
Aaron, I see another question from Lise with Carrboro Yoga. May I read it out for John?
Sure, unless Lise, do you want to ask it yourself, or we can read it out for you? Since we see her dog answer. Oh, here she is.
Yeah, hi, sorry. Yeah, no, I mean, we started out the pandemic completely debt-free, and our receipts are down right now 70%, and of course have been down 100% for months and months. So we've got this huge debt right now, but it's idle debt. And one of the main thing we're using that for is paying rent. And so we've been responsible tenants from the very beginning. We've not allowed the rent to become past due, but we also haven't paid ourselves anything for 18 months. We've sacrificed everything for this company, and to require us to be lousy tenants in order to get this grant seems somewhat unfair.
John, do you have a reaction? Then I have a comment on that, please.
Yeah, I would encourage you to look at other categories if there are other categories that you could apply for. I mean, basically, I mean, you've definitely shown a negative economic impact,
Yeah.
COVID, and so I would encourage you to find other avenues that you could potentially use these funds. Other, whether it's advertising, whether it's training.
But we're in a place where we don't want to advertise because we may go under. I mean,
Yeah.
What's the point of that? And especially with this new Delta and the masking requirements, you can imagine what that does to our yoga attendance. And it's true, we've already lost one facility. We've got Durham left and we've got Carrboro left. And both Durham and Carrboro now require masking. So we're completely kind of screwed.
So Liz, is your organization a corporation or an LLC? It's
a corporation.
So I would say your corporation has a debt to you. It has back payroll, and that you could borrow these funds for it to pay back payroll. And that is what it owes you.
Well, I thought about that, but then I don't want to jimmy any books up in order to, because we haven't actually done it that way. I don't want to start creating transactions that don't actually exist.
I think that it certainly, my personal opinion is not, John, that it could have a promissory note to you.
Okay. All right.
It has a promissory note to investors or to owners, and it may need to settle that. And maybe you and John can talk offline whether these funds could be used to settle a promissory note.
Thank you. I was thinking along those lines, but again, I didn't want to start messing and doing things,
Point is a good one. If you kept up and you can't use it to pay idle or PPP, and you use those to keep you out of debt, that is an unfortunate set here.
Right. Thank you.
What other questions do folks have, either to type into the chat or to ask John directly?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sheila.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I'm looking at using the funds for a construction project. I'm not sure I can get the actual quote in by the time the grant is due. I'm going to do everything I can. That's one question about an estimated expense. The second question is this, and I think it can be worked out, but we know how construction is right now. And I'm actually a little nervous. I've been hesitant even to reach out because I don't want to be rejected by every small contractor that I know. We know how busy they are. I have a feeling it could get pushed out, the construction. Can you talk to me a little bit about how to handle that language? Because I've already got my narrative going in my head. So thank you, John.
John, must the funds be expended or the project completed within a year? Can she prepay for it? And it may take a little while to finish.
Yeah, so the way that the language says in the policy as it's written is that the funds, all award funds expended no later than 1 year after the award being made. So now we will, of course, need your final report. And so I would say we are willing to work with businesses if there are situations that arise on a case-by-case basis. But generally, we're going to push you to conform to this. I mean, that's the whole point of having the policy. So, Sheila, if you say, if 6 months rolls around and you do a 6-month report, you say, well, I haven't gotten around to getting a hold of a contractor to come do this. Well, we might have a problem then. But within 6 months report, you say, hey, I got a contractor lined up. He just can't get here till month 11, and then it's going to take him a month to do the project. We can work with you on something like that. And so I think that's we're looking at good faith effort on both your part and you show good faith effort and we can show good faith effort. But yes, we're going to push you to conform to the policy, but we will I think there's some flexibility that we can work with you on these issues.
Aaron, if you're not seeing another question, I have one.
Please.
John, can you say a little bit more about the matching fund opportunity? How if an enterprise that's applying has some sort of matching funds that might give them an advantage. Can you say a bit more about that? And also, can you say a bit more about the training of workers and if or how that might relate to some existing federal, state, regional training programs and what they should be thinking about?
Sure. So as far as the matching funds go, basically what we're doing is we're just looking at, is the business willing to put up, and we know businesses are hurting. And so the whole point of this grant program is not to encourage you to spend money. If you don't have money to spend, don't. The matching, I mean, I would say there's a large number of prioritization categories that we're going to be looking at. I would say most businesses will have at least one or two of those that they will qualify. But at the same time, if a business can, we're still looking for investment in the community. And so we want to use the grant program as an opportunity to get additional investment. And so that's where we're looking at if the business is willing to put forth a little bit of additional funds to kind of help with investing more in the community. That's what we want to encourage, and we want to use this grant program to do that. So please, 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 please do not feel that if you are a business, oh my gosh, I've got to get a higher prioritization, I need to put some money up. That's not what we're asking here. If you have the money to put up, you're going to get a little bit of higher priority, but don't feel like that. I mean, we've got $300,000 to spend. So, look out for your business. Number one, do not put up money if you do not feel like you have the money to put up. As far as the workforce issue goes, and Katie's kind of the workforce expert in our economic development circle here in Orange County. So I'll let her maybe expand a little upon what she's asking me to expand upon. But the training program that we've kind of structured is based off of a federal, a state program through the workforce development boards. And so essentially what we're looking at is we will pay for a trainer. We will pay you through the grant program to have one of your employees be a trainer. And there's some opportunities here to match those dollars with state and federal dollars for workforce funds. So where you can actually have the workforce board would help pay for those employees. So potentially, in a perfect world, what you could do is you could utilize this grant to pay for a trainer, in-house trainer, and you could use federal dollars and state dollars from the workforce board to pay for those employees. So you hire 3 to 5 new employees, they come in, you're using workforce dollars to pay for their salary, and then you can use this grant program to pay for the trainers. Your employee, have one of your employees or yourself, however you want to structure it, spend time training them, and the time that you spend training them can help pay. So potentially there's a structure here that you could have both a trainer and new employees that are payroll free, essentially, to you. Katie, do you want to expand upon that? Do you have any additional advisement on there?
I thought that was perfect. And I would just say, if this is new information, new concepts for anyone on this call, as far as dollars available to help you with offsetting the cost of bringing on new employees or upskilling those who currently work for you, and you'd like to learn more about these funding streams from the federal government that pass through our regional workforce board, give me a call. We'll talk through it. But they're called on-the-job training funds and incumbent worker funds. And so this is basically another complementary pocket of funds available to you if you're willing to hire some workers who come with some barriers. These would be non-traditional workers to onboard, like people who've been formerly incarcerated or been on unemployment for a long time. So basically these funds help de-risk onboarding and upskilling workers in those categories. And then John's funds through the Town of Carrboro can help cover the cost of the trainer who would be providing that training for them. So it's could be a nice win-win of making dollars go further. So again, just give us a buzz if you'd like to learn more, and we'll make sure you get that information.
We had promised this at 1 hour. If folks did want to stay 5 more minutes, I wanted to share a little bit about some new rules in the county and a few things we're seeing on community vaccination. Vanessa, you are going to likely need to jump off to another call. Just before, Citizen, would you had your hand up, and I said your name out loud with hesitancy. Will you say it so I can say it correctly?
No, you got it right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, Citizen, welcome.
Yes, I just had a question about for like when we're putting the budget and we're saying, okay, I think I can use like the full 20,000. What are the chances of, rather than getting the entire application rejected, that only you receive partial funding of what you've asked for? Or is it that if you guys see something that you're like, no, this can't be used towards it, and then the entire application will get rejected?
So that's not, we're not fully, we haven't fleshed that out yet, I guess to say. We are, I would say it depends. It depends. It's going to depend on the amount of grants we have to, I mean, if we get, 100, 200 applications, obviously we may not have the time to go through and strike out individual activities. If we get 15 applications, 20 applications, we may work through that. I think, I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but I think that that's probably the more of the approach we will use, is going through and doing the prioritization and then verifying that the activities are appropriate. This is kind of where the narrative comes into play, because if you can make an argument in your narrative that says that, here are the activities I'm asking for, and here's how they are negatively, these will mitigate the negative impacts of COVID-19 on my business by doing these activities. We're going to be looking more to that, to, do you have a solid narrative that is, for lack of a better term, giving the town an out when the auditors come and ask us about these things, that there is a logical argument that is made, that you have made, that these activities need to be done. So that's going to be probably a much heavier weight that we're looking at than the specific activities. We will verify that this activities, we're definitely going to be looking through there and making sure that nothing is odd in there, but really the narrative is your sales pitch to us to say, these activities fit into your broad categories and will help mitigate the impacts of -19 on my business.
So to say, I understand. John, do you have if someone say, will you fund A, B, and C? It is possible that the selection committee says, we'll fund A and B, but because of limited funds, we're not going to do C. So it's possible, you don't know yet, but they might ask for 20,000 and you give them 10. But I heard Citizen's worry is if she asks for 20 and gets rejected, but had she asked for 10, it would have been approved.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be focusing as much on, unless you're the prioritization comes down and you're the last applicant before our cutoff. I don't know that we're really going to probably run too much into that. We're going to be looking for, applicants to clearly demonstrate that in their narrative that this will help mitigate negative COVID-19 negative economic impacts. We're going to be looking at, we're not going to be judging as closely the activities that you're doing, so long as you have a narrative that clearly lays out a logical, justifiable reason for spending these funds and them mitigating.
And it's possible that in your narrative, you could indicate that you'd be happy to accept half or you need it all or whatever. But John, incredibly helpful. Katie, great recap for folks. If we had 2 more minutes, I wanted to share one. Today at 5 o'clock, a masking indoors order is in effect in Orange County. Durham did theirs, Boone did theirs. When we were asked for advice, we shared that it is better to require it so that you all as business people can say, hey, that's the rules, rather than have to say, well, we're requiring it, but they're not requiring it. Several people have asked, why are we masking back up when 88% of the adults in Orange County are vaccinated? Y'all, 88% of the adults. Now, it's only 60-some% of all people, but we have an incredibly good vaccination rate. I will remind you that our workers do not live in Orange County generally, and that most of the people working in Orange County drove from a less vaccinated community to come here to work, and with students returning to the university. So folks are asking you, hey, we're doing such a great job, why mask up again? It is still one of the most important things you can do. Our hospital remains in good shape, as you all are seeing this across the country and maybe worried about how our hospital is faring. They have 45 patients with COVID today. They had 0 back in May. It is far less deadly than it was before with their treatments, but wanted to let you know that was going on. The university is going to require vaccination for all students, faculty, and staff, or is going to require them to test weekly. That is new. Faculty and staff did not have to test last time. They had the option of testing. And so I think that will make improvements. The Chamber of Commerce has decided to require all employees to vaccinate. I would encourage you to consider requiring it, all employees to vaccinate. We will also require vaccination in order to participate in any of our in-person programming. The Town of Carrboro has decided to require all of its employees to vaccinate effective September 1, and I believe will also require vaccination status. You all saw Coronado, one of the downtown businesses require vaccination in order to enter. We know that's a harder thing when you're transacting. Say it again.
It was Mercado Pizza.
Mercado. That is a harder thing to do, we know. Regarding the job market, we are seeing some improvement. I don't know if you all are. The chamber just listed a position and have had 17 applications for a junior communications position in 4 days, and they're reasonable and good people. A last little note I'll say, and Ray, I'll call on you. You all know Mackenzie Reinhold. She was the manager of Carrboro United. She is, as effective today, the Chamber's new Director of Programs and Member Engagement. So Vanessa will be leaving us, and she'll play a stronger role with the Carrboro Business Alliance, and will be managing Chamber programs. And we're still hiring for communications. Ray, did you
Aaron, did I just hear you say, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you just say that you'd encourage us to require vaccinations? Part of my question is, I should probably go off video because my internet's being weird. Okay, maybe you can hear me better now. Okay. I am sort of torn between, am I not allowed to ask applicants or employees about their vaccination status because of healthcare privacy requirements, HIPAA?
So the legal advice that
ask my employees. I tell a new guy, I have no idea what
you got a little garbled at the end. Hopefully you can hear my reply. The advice we have is that employers may require employees to vaccinate. And that you're allowed to ask them their vaccination status. If you require employees to vaccinate, you do need the exception, though, for ADA or for a medical or documented other reason. But you may ask them if they are vaccinated, and you may require it, is what we've been told as a condition of employment.
Aaron, I want to interject because it's 8 after 10. Anyone who needs to sign off, please feel free to do so. John, I know you've got another meeting that you're now behind on. So if you can stick around, great. But if you need to scoot, we totally understand. And then Aaron and I can stick around for a few more minutes to field any other additional questions. But I do want to give everyone sort of permission and freedom to sign off and not feel beholden to stay.